There's always an opportunity to take a hard look at how we think, how we assess all of the information that's coming at us, particularly right now in our current day and age of massive social media, putting out everything from the current tweet to an actual piece of news. The news media is no longer what, at least growing up, and I've been around the block several decades, that we used to look at the news, Walter Cronkite, as somebody who was actually giving us information that was neutral. And that's really no longer the case. And I don't know, maybe it never was. Regardless of whether or not we could rely on newscasters in the past to give us valid information or not, right now we need to take a hard look at how we are thinking, how we process and what we do with all of that data. And this guy right here, Rolf Dobelli, who wrote The Art of Thinking Clearly, is one of my go-tos for this. He has literally 99 fallacies or problems with our logic that he outlines in this book. I am not going to go through all 99 of them with you. If you are that interested as a result of this dialogue that we're going to have together with this information, then get this book and start underlining it and highlighting it yourself, because I know mine is pretty dog-eared and pretty deeply underlined. Knowing this information doesn't mean that we're not going to still engage in all of these fallacies in thinking and logic and decision making. It just means that somewhere in the back of our brains, there's a part of our knowledge base that says, you might want to stop and give this a second thought, or go pull out our handy dandy field guide for functional decision making and challenge what we're thinking by looking at the mistakes and fallacies that all humans make. I wanted to start out in this intro with a little bit of Mr. Dobelli's intro and share with you a couple of things that he says. The failure to think clearly, or what experts call a cognitive error, is a systemic deviation from logic. Systemic is key. What he means by that is that it's not just Western society. It's not just the United States. It's not just a particular culture or subculture that engages in these errors in logic and thinking. It's all of us, all the time. Dobelli goes on to say, it is much more common that we overestimate our knowledge than we underestimate our knowledge. Yes, all the time. Overestimate not only that we know things, but we overestimate how valid those things are that we know, and we overestimate the degree to which the things that we know actually reflect universal truth. Social proof is when we basically default to a herd mentality. Because everybody else is doing it, we think it's valid, and we think it has substance, and we think it should weigh in on our own decisions. This is the place commonly where parents will look at their children and go, well, if Johnny was jumping off a bridge, would you do it too? Because the child is using as a point of argument that everybody is doing X, in hopes that mom and dad will get on board and will go, yeah, go ahead. That's evidence of social proof right there. But let's take this deeper. In the past, following other people's behavior or our tribe's behavior was a really good survival mechanism. If everybody in our tribe was doing a certain type of thing in certain types of circumstances, there's a pretty good bet, biologically anyway, that those behaviors and actions helped facilitate survival. So rather than reinvent the survival wheel myself, I'm just going to follow on with what my tribe seems to have already figured out from past experience. The problem with that is that we do it today ad nauseum. We don't pause and actually think about whether or not the behaviors, the herd mentality, and the decision making there comes from a valid place of data and experience. One of the most impressive, though troubling cases of this phenomena can be traced back to one of Nazi Germany's infamous propaganda ministers. He delivered a speech to a very large audience in 1943. As the war went from bad to worse for Germany, he demanded to know, do you want total war? If necessary, do you want a war more total and more radical than anything that we could even imagine today. And the crowd went nuts. But if you think about that question, asked individually, one-on-one, with a moment to pause and think, how many of the people who were in that massive stadium would have responded with that same, yes, let's do this? Probably very few. But social proof is so strong that it will drive us to a collective decision-making that otherwise, individually, in our own conscience and our own logic, we would never agree to participate in.